beautiful creative community. Today we're going to talk a little bit about flares. I just want to show you how we draw flares in fashion for fashion design or costume design in honor of my fashion sketching courses as well as pattern making course, which I'm have an open enrollment right now. So this goes with pattern making. Actually, it's a pattern making and draping course. And it comes with 2 live sessions with me as well right now during the promotion. So meaning 1-to-1 live calls that you can schedule within 6 months of your sign up so we can go deeper. I'm going to show you how we can draw flares, what flare is about. There's actually, I'm also making this video to promote the Draping FLARES video that's linked in my bio right now. But before we draw flares, I talked about something called circular flare in my posts this week and in the video that I linked. So I'm going to take a piece of muslin here, and the first way that I'm going to draw flares, oops, sorry, I just hit my chin on my light and it turned, okay. First way of what is circular flare? I'm going to create a circle, sort of. It's a squarish kind of a circle. And then I'm going to make a circle in the middle of the circle, which could be, this could be the hem of a dress, for example. And this could be the waist of a dress, of a skirt. For example, it could be many things, okay? And then I'm also going to cut a slit here, and you'll see why. So my circle, let me just adjust this circle so it doesn't look as square as it did the last time we looked at it. I'm like looking through my camera and then looking at the table. A little awkward, but okay. I want to make sure all these things are the same length because I want to. Again, I'm drawing. Am I not drawing? But I'm drawing with scissors. As I release it, this doesn't look like flares, does it? But flares is, this is flares. When I take the circle and turn it into a straight line, that's where I get flares. You see, these are flares. Ta-da! So we've just drawn them 3-dimensionally. Depending how stiff your fabric is, they may stand up. You could even stitch like a wire into the hem. Or if it's very soft, it could be charmeuse or chiffon, and it would just drip and fall with gravity. Flares also create cascades. Cascades. I feel like I posted an illustration of cascades recently. Trying to remember. I'm having like a deja vu and I can't remember where it was at the moment. Okay, anyway, they show up a lot. You see what they are. These are cascades. Basically, the straight line goes vertical, and the cones of fullness that are flares become a decorative element. The interesting thing also about flares is that there are no gathers. You see how the straight line is completely smooth? And the flares are basically added fullness, all at the hem. No fullness at the line, yeah? And tons of fullness at the edge. So in pattern making, I am going to sketch with you, I promise. But the theory of circular flare is just too fascinating to ignore. So in theory, if you want me to get all collegiate on you from my Parsons career teaching, is, let's say I have a straight skirt or a straight cuff to a sleeve or something, okay? If I slash it, which is a word I used in my post the other day, and I'm thinking not everyone knows what that means. Let's say this is my straight skirt pattern or my straight cuff to a fancy sleeve pattern. and then I slash and open it. I will use pins to illustrate. That would mean, let's say the edge of the sleeve was there. Let me do this a little. I'm not sure where to space this at this moment. This is very impromptu. Okay, so I have added fullness. All right. You know what? You know what's going to work best? You know what, my dears? Stay with me. I'm very improvisational, but that is part of the beauty of how we work together. So, you know, some people like that, some people don't. For me, something like pattern making can get very dry if we don't keep the magic and the life in it. So this is to illustrate how I just added fullness into the rectangle of fabric, and I'm adding more. Now, if I was working with paper pattern and really seriously teaching, I would be slashing to, not through the line, and doing that, getting really close to the edge, means that it will lie perfectly smooth and flat. I'm kind of setting a bad example right now because you're seeing these lumps, but these lumps disappear if I slash all the way. These are all the little magic bits that come up when you study pattern making, draping, drawing. There's so many beautiful mysteries and magic to fashion. And I love putting this magic into your eyes and into your hands like my teachers did with me. Slash one more time, to but not through, and open. And what happens is, my loves, hang on. I ran out of muslin, but my intention was to keep going. So let's pretend that the cuff or the skirt or the collar that we were working with was just that rectangle I started with. Now I blend a new line to be my new hem. Let's say it doesn't have to, it could be anything. This is what I'd like you to get over time, is to really feel the over time you'll get to really feel the theory in action. I'm going to put I'm adding seam allowance. Okay, this is not really a pattern making video per se. My intention is to draw with you today, and right now I'm drawing in space. Yes, and then we will draw on paper. But back to where we started. All right, we started with this, but what I've illustrated to you now, hang on, I love what happens when I pull it tight. You see how clear that is? Yeah. And here now I have seam allowance, waistline, hemline, right? Waist line, or you could call it WL, hemline, and then you can see how I took the original shape and added flares to it, and thus ended up with, yes, this is full of pins, but I still ended up with flares. All right. In fact, once I've made my draft, I could take all these pins out because I don't actually need them anymore. And I still know it's going to fit because it's the same, it's based off the same original size shape. So if this would be my new cuff to my sleeve or my new skirt. I went from a straight skirt with an elastic waistband to a circle skirt. This could be the new side seam for the skirt. Subtle flare. Or if this was only the front of the skirt and this was side seam and side seam, it would be a more fuller, more flared skirt. So how does that turn into drawing? I hope that was enlightening. A little quick concept that is going to change the way you look at everything, which is my goal. It's so exciting to look at clothing and analyze what you see. Now here I just decided to take a sketchbook page from my model drawing class and use her as a foundation to sketch a few little designs. It's going to be an artsy kind of sketching session because I'm going to use like an art pencil. Whoops, let me adjust my lighting for you. Things keep changing. Just don't want it to cast a shadow when I put my pencil down. Okay, so let's say, for example, if I want to do, maybe she has like a scoop neck, but she's going to have, now remember, it depends how your fabric texture is. So if it's something really drapey and droopy, like, now I'm going into my fabric stash, which I didn't originally plan to. Let's see, so I don't want to take too long. Well, if my fabric is crisp and stiff, yeah, maybe, and light enough, like if it's an organza or something, it's going to stand up and out. But if it's drippy and droopy, like this fine jersey, for example, it's going to behave entirely different, even though, right, like look how this stands up when I ruffle it, yeah? And this, when I ruffle it, it just falls right over. And clearly that will also be true for your flares, right? They are either going to just drip and fall. Let's do the drippy flares on her shoulders. And then we'll do stiff flares on her down around her waist. So we're going to have two different, let me just give her arms really quickly. She's got like, okay, let's design some clothes onto her using flares. And feel free to pipe in questions if you have questions while I'm sketching. Okay, just checking the questions here. Okay, so for example, and then it also depends how acute this curve is, because if it's very subtle, you get a little bit of flare. If it's very acute, you get a lot of flare. So there's just no end to how this can go. But flares can be very much like this. Because I'm using the jersey here, it's going to be drippy and droopy. And we talked about the flares being cones. So literally when you're draping or drafting flares, you get to pretty much like count them. So literally, you know, how many cones. And these cones, there's no lines in the neckline because there's no gathers usually in flares. See what I mean? They disappear. They go from lots of fullness to zero fullness, but they usually smooth where they're stitched, which makes them easy to sew and construct as well. And when I'm sketching them on a model, something like this, I'll use deep shadows under the, or even just a heavy line under the flares, because that shows and emphasizes that the flares are like popping off of the figure. Let's just say the rest of that top is like knitted and fitted. This, because we said it was going to be this jersey, right? And now let's just say we're going to use the stiffer fabric for the skirt. And we're also doing something with flare. And again, these are design choices. So maybe it's a very subtle flare up here. Very subtle. I'm going to draw these kind of lines so that you can feel it. It's as if I took like a skirt yoke, the waist to yoke line, and then I slashed it and I opened it so that it became more like this. Okay, that's what this is. And then I'm going to put lots of flare into that. Let's just say I'm going to add lots of flares into that seam. And remember, this fabric is stiff, so they might be much more. This is a little exaggerated and awkward because of where my camera is and where I'm looking, but I really want it to be mostly educational for you. Let's see. I like to shade my girl so that my clothes kind of pop off. Okay, so this is her knit top. I'm going to give it like a little gathered hem so it's actually a little bit blousey because I feel like it. And then this is going to be something super stiff, let's say. So, I mean, depending how full they are, they might all wrap back on themselves. But if it's less flare, it won't be so much of that. And you can even create ruffles out of flare. So there could be a row of ruffles all along this seam as a decoration. I hadn't really thought of that until just now. And it could even be, and that would stick out in the edges too. And then maybe there's 2 layers of flare in this skirt. So maybe there's another layer that also gets stitched into that yoke. So it's a double layer skirt. One way to get practice sketching these kind of flared hemlines is to trace a picture of a flared skirt. Let's see. And you can shade flares like you saw. Hang on a second. I always shade under hems regardless. You could think about, where's the light coming from, and then maybe shade everything on the other side of that light. So there's more like 3D effects. These are things we practice in model drawing class because we always have leotard models, but then clothed models. But these are also things you could practice draping and drafting in pattern making and draping with me. There's a lot of different ways to get into all these goodies. Let me know if you have any question in the comments as we're going. Let me think. Yeah, so now we added a ruffle, and I feel like the ruffle needs to stand out as separate from a ruffle is very 3D. Let me just try to put more shadow under it so that it sticks out more from see now how it pops out? Anything that's darker is going to fall behind anything that's lighter. Maybe I'll just give her, you know what, that just made me remember the funniest thing is that when I was a kid, date myself big time, I used to have these flared socks. Yep. Seriously, they had lace on the edge, like eyelet lace, but they were flared ankle socks. Not sure to be a trend anytime soon here, but I could do that with her socks. I'm using a really soft pencil, which I always recommend because it's super sensitive, lots of drama, lots of texture. I like to teach you to draw with a heavy hand so that you can feel the impact of what you've actually drawn. Rather, if your pencil is very hard and very sharp, it's hard to even feel that your lines have any impact. So we often work very soft in the beginning so that you can get used to feeling that impact and then wielding all the power that you have when you draw. So, and as far as cascades go, I could do something with cascades. Let's see, how can I fit this on the page? I'll do this. Let's say I want to put cascades down the front, down the side of her dress. I actually have a dress like this. I have a dress. I should have drawn that lighter, but that's okay. That has this detail running down it. So watch this. This is kind of fun. And now you know exactly how you would make this embellishment. And if you watch my video that's linked in the bio, you can see how to drape such an embellishment. There we go. That could be, ooh, wouldn't it be fun to have two of those running down a dress? Why not? So I can do this. I like to start from the top. If they're hanging vertically, this is what they'll do. And depending how, on the texture of the fabric, it's going to behave differently. You can always shade the undersides of lines. Yeah. And then let's see, we could even give her a flared sleeve, surely. Other side, maybe no sleeve at all. Maybe we do something like a little slit over the bust and just like a simple fitted thing. Ooh, maybe like this. Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. And then this dress, sorry, I'm designing as we go, is going to have one more row of cascades. I don't know if I'm going to like this dress, but I won't know unless I draw it, right? Then I can respond to my design. And then I can think about what's the shape of the actual hem. So like this. Maybe there's one more little cascade here. So they've been used as... This dress will have a lot of movement when she wears it, and it will be asymmetrical too. Yeah, I think I'm going to have a short sleeve on one side and no sleeve on the other side. Sometimes when I'm teaching and designing at the same time, I can't think as clearly. Plus, I have all these weird camera angles and light to worry about, but there's an example of how cascades might work for you. Maybe this panel is bias stripe, and maybe this panel is solid. And put some shadow under her bust, and maybe some shadows in between the cascades. Shade her legs. Yeah, just some examples of what you can do. May not be, your style at all, but you get the idea, right, of how these things happen. And of course, I don't talk a lot about erasers in any of my classes, but a lot of times I draw with this kind of X-ray vision. You can always take a clean piece of paper and put it on top, right? And then continue to develop the design into one sketch can become many different versions of a dress or a top, or it just keeps evolving. Actually, I'm going to put the black here too, so that the skin really peeks out of this little window. And then also maybe this, add more circular flare as a decoration under at the tip of the sleeve. I just want to clarify my hemline here. And these kind of panels that I put into this dress, that stuff you could also learn in the pattern making class. So I hope that was useful. Let me know what was useful, because I love to hear from you. Oh, I forgot to show this. This is our little drafting session, so you can see how these cones are these cuts. And remember, you know, you can add tiny bits of flare to get a subtly curved shape, or you can add lots of flare and get lots of fullness in whatever panel or piece that you're creating. You can hang them horizontally as decoration, or you can build them into, right, collars, necklines. You can make ruffles by making them short. You know, you can have them be baby hemmed. You can have raw edge hem, or you can face them with themselves. That's more of the stuff that I teach about in the pattern making and draping course, how to draft the facing, etc., etc. I look forward to hear from you about your experiences, your questions. I have every kind of fashion design class based on my many decades of teaching fashion design, and this may have felt kind of dry, but when I work with you individually, it's really about staying in touch with your own fire and joy in this glorious art form. Okay, guys, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you soon. Let me know what you think.